to have you all join us today for the session on understanding prevailing e-waste management rules. It is our pleasure to welcome Dr. Venkatesh sir, legal expert EHS compliances at Aparajita, who brings over 23 years of experience of global under law, academia and industry. So, in today's session, Sir will be providing us practical insights into e-waste management rules covering EPR framework, stakeholders' responsibility, compliance requirement, and key steps organization can take to strengthen e-waste compliances. Before we begin, I request everyone to post your questions under Q&A section so that after the session we can address your questions one by one. So now I invite Dr. Venkatesh sir to start with the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shreya. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this episode of EHS webinar. Let me share my screen. Please let me know if. So,
Yeah, it's visible, sir.
okay, is it in slide show mode?
Yeah, just close that hide button, sir.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
perfect.
I hope all of you can see. So in this episode, we will be discussing the e-waste management rules, the latest edition, from 2022. Okay. So before we start, we'll just get the overarching framework. Probably you have attended my earlier webinars would have been familiar with this. So unlike other typical acts, this Environment Protection Act is more like an umbrella type of legislature, which does not explicitly give any compliance directly. What it does is it empowers the uh, appropriate government and the pollution control boards to come up with rules, regulations for each subject matter. So that's how we have these different types of rules for each subject matter, starting from plastic waste, solid waste, battery waste, so on and so forth. And we have special rules for e-waste, which will be the topic of this discussion. So one unique feature of this framework is that all these rules are pretty much exclusive. It means if you are covered under one particular rule, then the other rule does not apply for your particular situation. Okay. So each rule, it defines what a waste is according to that rule, and they are exclusive. However, it is not a strict exclusion. This e-waste is a kind of outlier for this framework because it has touch points with hazardous and other waste management and transboundary rules, unlike the other waste management rules. So this has a touch point with one more rule. Okay, so they go hand in hand. And of course, there are exclusions also. We will see when we discuss the applicability. Okay. So this is the overall regulatory framework. All these rules, they emanate from the Environment Protection Act. Okay. In that sense, this is a pretty unique act because when you look at the act, it does not provide for much compliances. There are only two compliances the act tells. Okay. Uh, with that, let's go into the seminar. So since we talk about e-waste, the first thing is to understand what e-waste is. Actually, the rule defines, the rule 3L explicitly defines what e-waste is. So what you see on the slide is the actual definition of what the e-waste is. And this is the definition we have to follow. So you are familiar with the statutory position that if a particular word is or a phrase or a term is defined in a law, then as far as that law is concerned, you have to take that definition alone. Okay. So here there are a couple of very important points to remember. And this definition also has been changed from 2016. Okay. The important things is the e-waste can be the whole equipment, the device or parts discarded. Okay. Not only that, even the rejects from the manufacturing process is considered a e-waste. So this is a pretty wide definition of what a e-waste is. Okay. And it includes manufacturing process, refurbishment, and repair process also. Okay. And if you look at the definition, it mentions electrical and electronic equipment, which is also defined in the rule. In fact, the rule 3J defines it. So it defines it's again a very generic, all-encompassing definition. It's a wide definition. It basically says an equipment which depends on electric current or electromagnetic field in order to become functional. So if it uses a electric current or a field meaning instead of a current you have this, like if you take a battery, it has electromagnetic field. Just for understanding. Okay. So we see that that both the definitions are pretty wide and it involves a very generic consideration. Okay. Another aspect is this e-waste management rule. It has about 25 terms defined. Various terms are defined, and even common terms like a manufacturer, producer, recycler, consumables, parts, spares, even these words are defined. Okay, so this is a pretty compact, but it is a very, what do I say? It is closed regulation because whatever you want to know, most part, the rules, they define it and they consider it. And it has about 25 plus rules. And it's a very compact, about 18 pages, and it has a long list of schedule. Okay. With that, let's go to the applicability. The first thing, as you know, that whenever we talk about any law, first question you ask is whether it is applicable or to whom it is applicable. So there's a rule 2, an exclusive rule which talks about applicability and exclusion. In this slide, we will talk about the applicability. In the next slide, we will see the exclusion. The rule says so all these words are from the rule itself, which I have taken back. It says every manufacturer. So like I said earlier, the term manufacturer is also defined, which is what is given within the brackets, rule 3P, for example. Every producer, every refurbisher, every dismantler, every recycler. What do they do? It says involved in manufacture, sale, transfer, purchase, refurbishing, dismantling, recycling, and processing of e-waste or electrical and electronic equipment listed in Schedule 1, including their components, consumables, parts, and spares. So like I mentioned in the earlier slide about the definition of e-waste, if you look at this is also wide, very wide. It encompasses pretty much every conceivable process or items or materials or situation we can think of is covered. And even the different types of players like producers, manufacturers, they are also covered. And this is also a new definition because in the earlier definition, just for comparison, the word consumer and bulk consumers were included in the applicability explicitly, but here those words are not there. Okay. From the compliance perspective, as far as the consumers or the bulk consumer is concerned, there is pretty much only two compliance which the rule talks about. It has shifted the onus to the manufacturer, producers, and other players. Okay. So the only compliance requirement for bulk consumer is that they have to deal with registered recyclers or refurbishers or manufacturers as far as disposing of that e-waste is concerned. Because as I said, e-waste can be generated both in the manufacturing process or in the entire life cycle or the users, and the e-waste definition is pretty wide. And the bulk consumer definition says if somebody is using 1,000 units of equipments mentioned in Schedule 1. Schedule 1 has 100 plus equipment starting from with laptops, batteries, cell phones, and so on, so forth. So any entity which uses 1,000 units, so that is the threshold. So from as far as the audience is concerned, I believe there is a mix of audience, coming from different stages. I think there are some producers, dismantlers, and other bulk consumers. So as far as the bulk consumer is concerned, that is one compliance. And there is one more slight compliance in case you have multi locations, and if you're transporting for some reason, then the provisions of the hazardous and other waste management and transboundary movement rules will apply. So these are the only two compliances for bulk consumers. Okay. Other than that, pretty much there is no compliance requirement. Okay. So coming back to the applicability, as we see, this is applicable to the various players at various stages and various types of handlers of the e-waste and the electrical and electronic equipments. Okay, that's what the applicability says. Now let's consider the exclusion part. So it has 4 exclusion. Number 1 is, like I said in the framework, that these laws are exclusive. The waste batteries, as covered in the battery waste management rules, are excluded from the application of this e-waste management. Okay, there is a separate battery waste management rules, because batteries also, electronic, electrical equipments, but they are excluded. Second exclusion is packaging plastic as covered under plastic waste management rules. Because if you look at these components, these equipments, the plastic is ubiquitous, everything pretty much contains plastic, either in terms of the structure, or even for some functional aspects, plastics are used. Okay. Another big exclusion is type of enterprise or the entity. So you guys are familiar with this MSME concept, like micro, small, and medium enterprise, which are defined under the Micro, Small, Medium Enterprise Development Act. So the enterprises which are defined as micro enterprises under that act, which comes under that definition, which is basically defined in terms of the revenue and income, those terms, they are excluded from the application of this rules. Okay. And final exclusion is with respect to handling radioactive waste. So the radioactive wastes are covered under the Atomic Energy Act. So those wastes are also excluded. Okay. So this is about the applicability, application, and exclusion. So with that, we will go dive deep into the compliance framework and some salient features of these rules. Okay. When one looks at the e-waste management rules, there are about 50 plus, 52, I believe, compliances expressly provided for different use cases, for different entities, different players. Okay. Totally, there are 50 plus compliances. So what is the basis? There are basically two key concepts from which these rules and the compliances are evolved. One is they took the entire life cycle and they want to bring in the compliance through the entire life cycle. Okay. This is one key concept. Entire product life cycle compliance is addressed. Okay. And another important principle or a concept which finds its application or evolution in these rules is polluter pays principle. This is one of the cardinal principles of environmental laws in India and elsewhere, of course. This is one of the key concept, governing concept principle in environmental jurisprudence or environmental laws. Polluter pays principle. So basically, this principle says if I cause pollution, I should pay for it. Okay. So from these two concepts only, the compliance framework and the entire e-waste management rules have been drafted and formed. So when one looks at the compliances, so this just for this webinar and for understanding, I have split into these different types, but actually this is not the way the rules are. This is for our own understanding and easy um, exchange of ideas and explanation. I have grouped into these. First is the general compliance. So what do I mean by general compliances? Like typical compliance, like registration, returns, which is found in various regulatory, statutory framework, compliance framework. Like you have to register and you have to submit returns, periodically. Similarly, you have to adhere to standards and specifications. So that is another compliances. You will find those in this also. Okay. And like I said earlier, as far as the bulk consumer is concerned, this compliance is the key compliance. In fact, that's the only compliance apart from the hazardous waste, which is very on occurrence use case based, is dealing with registered establishments. So this will, the notion or the rationale is because we talk about the entire product life cycle. So when we deal with registered establishments, it's easy to track the products over its life cycle in a macro level. That's where this compliance is made expressly in the law. So if you are a bulk consumer, you have to necessarily deal with registered establishments. Okay. Like the registered refurbisher, recycler, producer. Okay. So when you are disposing of your e-wastes, you have to comply with this. This is expressly provided in the rule. Okay. So these are the general compliances, and you see these general compliances in this rule as well. So rule talks about registration of each category of players, like manufacturer, you have to register as a manufacturer. Another key important compliance requirement, which is kind of unique, is that if a particular entity performs more than one function or it's involved in more than one function, then separate registration is required because the registration is based on the functionality. It's a functional registration. So let's say you are a producer as well as a refurbisher. Then you have to register yourself as a producer as well as register separately as a refurbisher. Let's say you are a producer as well as a recycler. Then you have to get to register. That is the law. So the law expressly says that if you fall under more than one type, then you have to register independently, individually. Okay. And the compliance also varies for those types. Okay. That's about the general compliance, which is what the usual typical compliances we see from various acts. Then the second compliance is with respect to EPR, extended producer responsibility. This is directly coming from the entire product life cycle compliance, which we discussed. Okay, this is a consequence of that concept. It's emanated from that concept. Okay, extended producer responsibility. So it says extended responsibility. So the producer is made responsible for the entire product life cycle. It is not that they have to take the best manufacturing process, best sales process, follow all the standards. It doesn't stop there. It extends, to the collection and recycling and all those things. That's what this EPR is, extended producer responsibility. Okay, this is another key compliance. We will see it in detail later. Then the other one is regarding hazardous material. Like I mentioned earlier, this e-waste management rules is an exception to the general framework of exclusivity. Here I said that there will be touch points and there is a separate chapter. Okay. We have a slide on that. We will discuss. And with respect to the polluted place principle, the place you see that in action is this environmental compensation. So the notion of environmental compensation is part of this regulatory framework. It is embedded, it expressly provided in the rules that in case of non-fulfillment of EPR or violation of any provision, the authority is empowered to levy environmental compensation based on the polluter pays principle. So a small brief history. So this actually evolved from the judicial precedents and the environmental jurisprudence and environmental laws and enforcement, which emanated from judiciary, and then it got provided explicitly in the statute itself. So the statute has empowered. Previously, only the courts were, levying these compensatory penalty based on the polluter pays principle. But now, this finds a place in the law itself. Okay, and we'll discuss that. And especially, finally, there are some special provisions pertaining to solar cell, the photovoltaic panels and cells. Okay. Next is EPR. So the rules 13, 14, and 15, they deal with this EPR, the extended producer responsibility. Okay. So this is basically the crux of it. The producer is responsible for collection, recycling, refurbishment, environmental sound disposal at the end of life of the product which the producer is introducing or placing in the market. So now this covers the entire spectrum of the life cycle. So this is what I meant when I said the extended producer responsibility. And this aligns with the key concept of the entire product life cycle, because in all these stages, the environmental impact is there due to the product. not just at the manufacturing stage alone. Of course, while manufacturing, there is environmental impact. Okay, so this is the basic idea. So the responsibility extends. That's why the term extended producer responsibility. Okay. So what is this? How does it fix? When one looks at the Schedule 3 and Schedule 4, it specifies targets for the producer as a percentage by weight of the electric and electronic equipment which the producer introduces or sells or places in the market. Okay. Basically, the schedule provides for certain percentage by weight. Okay. Just as an illustration. So if you look at the Schedule 3 for this financial year 2026-27, which is called Y, the variable, is 70% of the equipment placed in the market in the year, the preceding year, Y minus X. So what is that X? X is nothing but it is the average life of that equipment. Okay. So if the average life of the equipment is X, you have to check what was the total equipment by weight placed in the year Y minus X, and Y is the current year 2026-27, and take 70% of that. So your EPR application is 70%. Okay, so you're responsible for that. It has to be recycled, collected, recycled, refurbished in a sound disposal manner. Okay. So to take this example further, let us consider the case of laptop with an average life X years. So your Y minus X will be 2021 because 2026 minus 5, 2021. Okay. So let us say that a particular producer has placed in market in the year 2021-22 1,000 metric ton. Then the EPR obligation for this current year, 70% of it will be 70 metric ton. So what this means is that the producer must purchase or submit EPR certificates corresponding to 70 metric ton of the recycled waste. So this is the EPR target. So this is for the case of equipments which are placed long back so that the year the life is passed. So what about newer ones, or the producers? Let us say they are in the market only for the years which are less than the average lifespan of the equipments. That's why the Schedule 4 specifies. It specifies a particular percentage for different years. It gives a table instead of this calculation. It gives a specific percentages. Okay, you can refer to the tables. Okay. So these are the two considerations. So if you are in market for longer than the lifespan of the equipments which you are putting it in the market, then these percentages from Schedule 3 will apply to you. If you are less, either in terms of the product or the company itself, then you have to refer to Schedule 4. Okay. And how do you get this? How do you comply with this? So basically, the EPR certificate to be purchased by registered recyclers. Okay. Like I said, sound environmental disposal is at the end of it. So the collection, recycling, the refurbishment, all this happens. But as far as the EPR certificate is concerned, the recyclers, they are the registered recyclers, of course. They are the one who are handling, generating these EPR certificates. Okay. So the rules talk about their responsibilities also. Okay. And every player has to be registered, and there is a e-waste management portal under Central Pollution Control Board. In that portal, you have to update your ECR certificate, and it will be, this is a very key important point I want all of you to take home, is it will be cross-checked by the CPCB with the recyclers. In case of any difference, only the lower figure, the lower number shall be considered. So this is very key. So ensure that there is no discrepancy. Okay. This is another reason why we have to deal with only registered players. Okay. Now coming to recyclers. So for recyclers, how do they generate this? Because what do the recyclers do? They recycle the materials, right? So for recyclers, there is another, kind of a conversion factor weighted average. That is this equation. So whatever quantity they are recycling, they are salvaging, if that is QP, the Central Pollution Control Board, they have a conversion factor, because we know that materially, functionally, practically, and process-wise, we don't have 100% efficiency of reclaiming all the material recycling. So there is going to be some loss. So to cover for the loss, only this conversion factor CEF, which is provided by the Central Pollution Control Board. It is a fixed factor for different materials, different metals, different substances. Okay. So you multiply by that, and then you can generate that particular EPR. This is for the recyclers. Okay. So let's say you are you are able to get 1,000 metric ton of particular material, let's say aluminum. And if the factor, I'm not sure what is the factor for it, let's say the factor is 4, then you can generate 4,000 metric ton EPR. So that's what it is. Okay. So as far as the EPR certificate availability is concerned, it is commonly available in these 4 different denominations, starting from 1,000 kilogram, 100 kilograms, 200, 500, and 1,000. And there are other denominations possible, but they are not common. Okay. The validity of this EPR is 2 years. Okay. Not extendable. And there is an incentive mechanism for refurbishing. So what is this incentive mechanism? We will see one example. So basically what the concept is, they want to encourage refurbishing as far as possible. So not just the EPR certificate, we can refurbish and get a deferred quantity for the EPR as well. And as far as the refurbisher is concerned, like I mentioned earlier, they are also a particular player, and they have to register under the e-waste management rules. In addition to that, refurbishing, there is a scheme provided by Bureau of Indian Standards. They have to register. It's a compulsory registration scheme. Okay. Because that standards you have to follow for refurbishing as well. Because manufacturing process has standards, so similarly refurbishing standards are also there. So if you are a refurbisher, you have to do the registration under e-waste management rule as a refurbisher, as well as compulsory registration scheme under the BAS, because that will set you the standards, for refurbished. Okay. And this rule provides for that not all the entire deferred quantity, only 75% of the deferred quantity is to be considered. So that is the incentive. So this is an example. This is an actual example given in the rule itself. So I have just copied and placed it. Okay. Let's consider this example. That's a real example given in that to understand this incentive mechanism. Let us say the EPR obligation in a particular year is 100 tons. Okay. And this particular producer recycling certificate, he got it for 60 tons, which is only, not the entire EPR, but 60 tons. But he got refurbishing certificate of 40 tons. Okay. And the particular refurbished product, the lifetime is 5 years, let us say, due to refurbishing. Because what you do is we are extending the lifetime, right? So out of 100 tons of EPR, 60 tons recycled and 40 tons refurbished. Okay, 100 tons, 60 plus 42. Okay. So now comes the incentive. Okay. So in this case, 60 tons EPR is achieved that year itself. Okay, because recycling target 60 tons. The remaining 40 tons, okay, which is there, which is reintroduced in the market, so to speak, 70% of that is carried over and added to the EPR for the year 2028 because 5 years is the extended lifetime. In other words, only 30 tons of EPR is obligation is there. So the 30 ton is 75% of the 40 ton. So now you see that there is an incentive to refurbish. This is the mechanism. So by extending the lifetime by 5 years through refurbishing, so the product is being used. So to incentivize that particular refurbishing, so there is a cap on EPR obligation is put. Okay. So this is the incentive mechanism under EPR. And of course, it provides for purchase of additional EPR certificate also. There is a exact mathematical formula it is given in the rule, which is like something like whatever is left over from previous year, you can add, plus up to 5% of the current EPR obligation you can add. So these are additional. Okay. So with this, next we will consider the Environmental Compensation Act. The first thing is, like I said, this is based on the polluter-based principle, which is one of the bedrock of environmental laws. Okay. So what is this environmental compensation and why and what for and what is the impact? That's what the rule says. So this compensation is levied, imposed for both non-fulfillment or false EPR as well as violations of any provisions of these rules. So this is a very significant thing we have to keep in mind. So like I said earlier, I think these compensations were provided by the judiciary or judicial proceedings or other proceedings, but here it is embedded, it is provided by the rule itself. Okay. And this environmental compensation is not the only consequence of non-compliance. Okay, this is one of the consequences. Just by the levy and payment of this environmental compensation, we cannot get away with the violation, okay, or non-compliance. This is in addition to the penalty. There is a perception notion that once we pay this compensation, that is the end of all. No, that's where I put. In fact, the rule explicitly says that it does not absolve the producer from EPR. You have to still, liable for the EPR obligation. Okay. However, there is a long rope. This EC is conditionally and partially refundable. Okay. In the case of non-fulfillment of EAPR, only that case, not for malified or false EPR. Okay, in the non-fulfillment of ECR, okay, if in the first year the obligation is met by the producer, EPR obligation, then 85% of environmental compensation will be refunded. Okay, returned. Okay. Refund may be a different connotation, returned. Okay. So it is, this is a very practical legislation, delegated legislation. Okay. Because people understand the difficulties and also it's a very practical and it is towards compliance rather than non-compliance. Okay. So they want to encourage compliance. Similarly, if you are able to complete or obligation or EPR is satisfied in the second year, 60% would be returned. And third year, 30% would be returned. Okay. So the rope is a fixed length rope. It's not a very long rope. Okay. So 3 years you have breathing time. So that's a very, even though it looks like a stringent provision, it's a very practical and it is a very considered provision. Okay. So it will be levied by the authority, and if the conditions are satisfied, it is returnable as well. Okay. Another key thing which is very important and which I believe is a key takeaway from this presentation is this will be levied on everybody pretty much. That's what I've highlighted. What I have written is actual exact words from the rule. Levied on unregistered producer, manufacturer, refurbisher, recycler, and any entity which aids or abets the violation of these. So no escape. Okay. It is not just these registered, even unregistered players. Okay. Come within the ambit of this EC. Again, like I said earlier, it does not absolve the producer from the EPR. Again, this incentive comes here also. Okay. So the deferred quantity, which we discussed earlier slide, that's also part of this meeting the obligation. Okay. That's why I reproduced this. As far as the guidelines, the details are concerned, how there is a detailed guidelines the Central Pollution Control Board has published, which details various methodology and the formulas, the calculations, everything pertaining to how the EC will be levied. So it's a very, very transparent mechanism and very less or pretty much no room for subjectivity. It's a very objective mechanism. Okay. Basically the EC compensation is based on the polluter pays principle. So what do you pay for it? You pay for the charges of collection, disposal, recycling. So these processes, and of course transport and all those things, they have some money component. Okay, so all these charges are added together. That is considered the environmental compensation. Okay. In a very high level, there are two regimes. One for the EPR in respect of EPR. The other is for all other non-compliance of other provisions of these rules. Okay. So this is again a very practical and a considered approach. Instead of putting everything in one basket, they have split the two use cases, one being related to EPR, the other one, other non-compliance, other provisions of the rule. Okay. The first one, as I said, on a very high level, is based on the cost involved in collection, recycling, those things. That's what it is for the regime one. And for the other regime, it is based on the fees of registration and connected matters. That's where the EC figures come into picture. Okay. So these are the broad two regime. Okay. Then switching gear, like I said earlier, this is one particular rule which has touch points with other rule. That's what is discussed in this slide. As far as the hazardous substances material is concerned, there is a exclusive chapter 7 which deals with hazardous material, because we know that, as a matter of fact, the electronic and electrical equipments deal with hazardous materials, substances, different um, carcinogenic or environmentally polluting, impacting metals like mercury, lead, cadmium, those things. What the rule says is, rule mandates reducing and restricting these hazardous substance in manufacturing process. Okay. So there are thresholds specified in the rule, because the rule makers have realized that you can't avoid these materials fully until alternate materials are found. So the next best option is to minimize, restrict their usages. So that is what this provision, it puts an express mandatory compliance obligation on the manufacturers and producers to reduce and restrict various hazardous substances like mercury, lead, cadmium, so on and so forth, which are given there in the rules. Okay. Second one, it talks about recyclability. Okay. It gives emphasis on recycle. So meaning you have to recycle those so that you don't dump it back to the environment. So we have seen the special recycling cases. It's emphasized again for hazardous substances. Specifically, it mentions. There is an exclusion for obvious case, systems used for defense. These two are very important for another key takeaway. The Central Pollution Control Board is empowered through this rule to conduct random sampling from market. They can pick from the market, they don't have to go to the warehouse, they don't have to go to the retail shop, they don't have to go to the manufacturing place, factories. They can pick from the market to modify and verify whether the product conforms to these regulations, and of course the regulations mandating the standards. Okay, it is empowered. This is a very, very important takeaway. And the producer is liable to pay for sampling and testing. They are made liable. Okay. And of course, needless to say, if the testing and monitoring returns negative results, then the regulatory mechanism will kick in. They will send notices. They have to do correction, either rectification or recall of the sample, and so on and so forth. Those consequences will follow. And finally, as mentioned, highlighted earlier, the provisions of hazardous and other waste management and transboundary movement rules is made explicitly applicable when you are dealing with transport of hazardous substance. So this is the touch point again. So these, in that sense, this is a very interconnected rules, and it is an exception to the general scheme of exclusive subject matter rules. With this, there are some nice resources I would like to share. So the one is the EC guidelines. It has a very good, very objective guidelines on how the environmental compensation is calculated and levied. And similarly on EPR also, the details are because the certificates is tradable. Okay, exchange is possible. And the CPCB, I would strongly recommend all of you to visit. They are very good FAQ, very good FAQ. Okay. And the two websites, there is one on the central, pollution control board website on e-waste management system. That's where all your registration and all those things happen. And the second website is the EPR, electronically tradable exchange, that happens. So these are very good resources to refer to. Okay. This, thank you for your attention and thank you for attending. So if there are any questions, we can discuss those.
Yeah, hi, sir. So, am I audible?
Yeah. So we have some questions. We can take
Yeah,
some questions. Yeah.
yes. So, the first question was, where does items like pen drive, floppy drive, hard disk appear? Are they classified as e-waste products?
Actually, to be honest, I don't remember all the listed items in schedule. I would presume they are there, and you said, it's an electronic data storage device, definitely. So I think it's a correct understanding because all these devices store electronic data. So I would say definitely yes.
Okay. There's one more. It's like the person is asked, they need a clarification on EPR validity.
I am not sure what clarification. Actually it is it's valid for 2 years. Okay, so I'm not sure what specific clarification is there. So maybe you can type in while we answer the other questions.
Okay. Another question is, we being IT software service organization, primary purchase UPS batteries, desktop, laptops for development of software service. So are we going to cover our responsibilities in this session?
The answer is yes. Just to reiterate, since you guys are a software company, does not fall into the five types. You may come into the concept of bulk consumers only, provided you are using 1,000 units. It's an aggregate of 1,000. Let's say you use, 300 desktop, so 500 laptops, then it is 800, then you have other things. So like that, if you are using 1,000 units from that schedule 2, I would request you to look at the schedule and list all your IT assets, count them. And if the number crosses 1,000, then there are only two compliance responsibility for you. Okay, maximum two, which is number one is the bulk consumer responsible is to deal with only registered users. When you are disposing your um, equipments, you have to deal only with registered entities. This is very important. This is the one obligation. This is there for everybody. Okay, so for you also. And I'm not sure how many branches you are, how you are operating, how you are dealing with your waste. In case if you are involved in transporting, in case, let's say you are having 10 different branches, and if you are pulling the waste from all the branches in one branch, then you have to pay attention to the transboundary movement rules. Okay, so these are the only two obligation, which was not the case earlier in the 2016 Act. So there were some other obligations like registers and returns. Here, they have simplified it. They have pushed the onus onto the manufacturer producers. Okay. As far as you are concerned, only these things. Next question.
Okay. Next question is, how can we do e-waste lithium ion battery? E-waste regarding lithium ion battery.
No. Like I said, the batteries waste covered under the battery waste rules, they don't come under the e-waste rules. They are exclusive. Okay. So, battery waste, if it is a battery waste as per the battery waste management rules, then this rule is not applicable to those waste. Okay, next
Okay.
question.
We are using battery operated forklift in our company, and all the batteries have been procured locally. We generate waste batteries during our operation. Could you please clarify under which category should we register for compliance under battery waste management or EPR or on EPR portal?
Okay, so the battery waste management registration is there according to the battery rules because you are dealing with batteries. That's there. But this you are using. You said you are using battery operated forklifts.
Yes.
Okay, so these four. So you are just using the forklift, then EPR portal registration need not come because you won't be having any fall under the four categories. You are not a producer, you are not a manufacturer, you are not a recycler, you are not a refurbisher, right? You are only a consumer. So registration is required only for these, not for consumers. Battery waste is different.
Okay. Um,
And I think somebody was asking about the PDF files. Yeah, all these files are available in the website, but I will share it with Shreya. Maybe you can share it. Okay,
yes.
Dinesh.
There's one more. 1,000 units will include ACs, UPS, fans, fax machine, etc. Kindly clarify.
Oh, yeah, fax machine, yes, but ACs and UPS, yes. Uh,
Fan and
ACs,
fax machine.
fax machine, yes, I know, I have seen it. But other things, I'm not sure. Let me open the schedule quickly. Let us check now itself. There are more than 100 items, Refrigerator is there under, let me see. Yeah, fax is there. Electric fans are there. Vacuum cleaners. They all come under the category of large and small electrical and electronic equipments. Okay. So there it talks about large cooling appliances, freezers. Okay. So I believe all these are there. Okay. Even electrical cookers, electric stoves, microwave oven, everything is there. In fact,
Okay.
they have a couple of nice one. Maybe I can share my screen so that all of you can see it. Hope you can see my screens. No,
No, it's not visible, sir.
is it visible?
No.
Uh,
Also in the audience, we have one person who is raising hand. Can you please type in your question in chat box or Q&A section?
is my screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, if you look at this, it talks about, electric fans, other fanning, vacuum cleaners, and it talks about large cooling appliances. Even these things are very less these days, even low pressure sodium vapor lamp. So refrigerators, washing machines, everything. So pretty detailed listing. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, next question.
Yes, sir. Okay. So there's one last question. Plastic coming along with import products, but we are not directly importing plastic. In such a case, do we need to register under importer category?
No, in e-waste, there is, I really don't understand. So the question,
I'll repeat it once. He's saying that when they're getting certain products, with that the plastic is coming, but it is not directly what they are importing. So do they have to get registered under importers category?
oh, okay. So if the plastic waste is, it's excluded from the definition of e-waste, as we saw in the earlier, it's not, let me go back to the applicability thing. Hope you can see my screen. So packing
Yes.
plastic covered under plastic waste management. If that is the plastic what you are dealing with, then it is excluded. Only the plastic waste management rules will kick in. So there, if you are importing, those registration will come into picture, not this. Here, there is no classification of importers, only the manufacturers, all those the producers. If you are importing electronic device equipment which has plastic packaging, those just for the packaging don't come into the picture. Okay.
Okay. I believe those were the questions which we had for today. In case if there are any more questions, you all can type in the chat box. We'll be addressing it later on also through emails. There is just one. Is it required for bulk consumer to continue to file e-waste return?
Yeah, I was expecting this question. Yeah, so this the 2020 rule, it came in force in 2023. Okay, so there was this confusion, but actually there is none. There is no return specified under this. But however, to demonstrate that you have dealt with only registered entities, we strongly recommend that you maintain those records. It's not that you have to file it, not for the filing purpose, but for your own compliance purpose. So do not discontinue the practice of maintaining that records. But sending it to the government is not needed.
Okay. Next question. They're asking, they're doing annual returns on e-waste as well as EPR e-waste quarterly returns. Why such thing happens as no more e-waste authorization has been sanctioned?
Mm, and can you read the question again? I
Yeah.
don't follow it.
So they're saying that annually also there is e-waste returns as well as EPR waste returns, which is quarterly. So they're asking that why there is why such thing happens as there is no more e-waste authorization that has been sanctioned.
The first part I understand, second part I don't understand. Maybe I'll respond to the first part. See, the
Yeah.
EPR waste quarterly, see these two returns, basically the concept is, see, can't have, we should be doing throughout the life cycle, we should be doing in a continual manner. That's why the concept of quarterly return comes in, so that we can predict, we can estimate what is going to happen as far as the compliance and the entire life cycle management of the product is concerned. Okay, that is the overarching reason why they have these two, annual as well as quarterly. Okay, not to burden with more compliance, but because there are a lot of seasonal variation will be there and things like that. Okay. So because of which only this is there and expressly mentioned in that, okay, the reason is mentioned. So if you go through the guidelines for EPR, they would in detail explain all these things. Okay, that's number one. So regarding e-waste authorization, I'm not really sure what you mean by that. Okay.
Okay. So there is one more. Uh, in an automotive company, we have digital dashboards integrated into our vehicle. When considering vehicle with a lifespan of 15 years, should the digital dashboard also be treated as a part of vehicle's electrical or electronic component for same lifespan, particularly in context to EPR?
I think this is a fantastic question. When we look at the definition of e-waste, that's where I would like to start. It says the whole hard parts, even consumables, even spares, everything is considered. Okay. So to find answer for your question, I don't know from the top of my head. The place to look for is the schedule 2. In the schedule 2, if your dashboard product is listed as a separate equipment, then you have to go by its validity. Okay, not the validity of the integrated system or the extended system, namely the car, because different parts of the car will have different lifespan, right? The car itself is as 15 years, like you said. So that is the place where you have to go. So I would recommend you to check the schedule and find the closest or the product grouping category it is listed. If any doubt, we can take it offline. That is a
Yes.
fantastic question.
Yeah. There is one more. If electrical and electronic products are not identified in category, but while importing that product, we need EPR certification, then in which category we should take these products like industrial burners or transmitters?
Oh, okay. So this is very technical in nature. I'm afraid I can't have a ready-made answer for this. Rather than a generic thing is, see, you can't even import before going through a lot of other compliance requirement. That's number one. So I don't think this hypothetical situation would arise practically. Of course, the restrictions on importing is quite huge. Okay, that's number one. And specifically regarding industrial burners and transmitters, I'm not sure what it refers to. So like I said, for in the previous question, I would request you to check the schedule, okay? And if there anything, we can take it offline, like a consultancy, we can do it. On top of my head, I'm unable to give a definite answer.
Okay, sir. So thank you, sir, for such an insightful session and the classification which you gave for various categories. It was very informative session for everyone. And thank you, audience, for being such a lovely audience with having all necessary questions which were required to be addressed. So thank you, everyone. And this session
Thank you,
will
Shreya.
be there on our website, so you all can go and visit it again.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Shreya. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you all for the questions. Hope you find it useful. See you next time. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.